today on Ag News Daily.
Corn is good for the rotation, and then peanuts come along. Peanuts, not only are they supplying nitrogen to themselves, but they leave like 20 pounds of residual fertility for the next crop. So which is corn, and then we do 2 years of corn or sweet corn, and then back to peanuts.
Welcome back to the weekly edition of the Ag News Daily podcast. Tanner and Delaney hanging out kinda together today.
Tanner, I'm catching whatever is going around, so I'm going to spare you my germs today.
I do appreciate that. I feel like I've been stocking up on the vitamin C just to try and get through trade show season. This week, we got to spend time at the Iowa Ag Expo, and next week, we're headed down to Louisville for the National Farm Machinery Show. Are you going to be headed out to Commodity Classic at the end of the month, Delaney?
Of course, we're getting ready for that. It's hard to believe it's about a month away now. And right before Commodity Classic, I'm heading to Asia. So hopefully we'll bring our listeners a quick update while I'm there in Vietnam and South Korea.
Well, that sounds like an exciting trip, listeners. Plenty of places if you want to catch us out and meet us in person, or if you want to give us suggestions for topics, interviews, or anything of the alike, please do that. Let's jump into weather to start the day off. This week, we brought a mix of precipitation throughout the Midwest. Another system is planned for this weekend that might bring some heavier snow across the north. Meanwhile, we've got cold air from the northern plains that will shift southward, replacing this week's warm weather and pushing the storm track further into that southern region. Could bring additional storms and precipitation for parts of that region. This colder air will linger in the northern plains throughout the most of the month, with occasional storms bringing some much-needed precipitation to those drought areas. The next system is arriving today into Saturday and will bring more of that rain-snow mix. For the rest of next week, frigid temperatures will stay up north, while the southern will experience unusual warmth, highs topping in the 80s. Several weather disturbances will track eastward, following that temperature divide, leading into that widespread precipitation like we talked about. Over the next 5 days, Northern California and the Northern Rockies should see significant snow, which will be welcomed, with totals potentially reaching 10 inches, Delaney, in the Sierra Nevada. By mid to late next week, we shift back into the Midwest, and Mid-Atlantic could see some more of that precipitation as well. I know we got ice here in Iowa Wednesday into Thursday. Glad that it warmed up right away yesterday to get rid of most of that. So it'll be interesting to see if these storm systems track the way they're being predicted.
And we saw the groundhog saw his shadow, so 6 more weeks of winter to come.
Yeah, I don't think anybody expected it to be any different.
Yeah. Well, after we saw President Trump take office, we of course heard threats that retaliatory tariffs would go into effect. And that was the primary focus of a recent Senate hearing on the struggling farm economy, where they talked tariffs amongst other issues. Farm leaders voiced urgent issues, including the lack of a new farm bill, expiring tax breaks, labor shortages, and access to pesticides in addition to tariffs. American Farm Bureau President Zippy Duvall stressed the need for better trade agreements, saying, quote, "We need more access, not less. We need more fair trade deals, not less. And we need this administration because we haven't seen it in almost a decade now, getting really fair trade deals to be put in place and stick." The National Farmers Union President Rob LaRue warned of rising costs and supply chain disruptions, saying suppliers of essential goods like fertilizers are already increasing prices again and limiting sales due to trade uncertainty. So potentially some fertilizer fireworks to come. Farm leaders also pushed for a higher farm bill baseline, to increase reference price triggers, expand crop insurance and solutions for labor and pesticide access, with this new group now of senators and House representatives in action. But trade remained the top concern for all parties, with broad agreements that farmers need stable markets. Duvall also went on later to say that without a farm bill, as many as 20% of Farm Bureau members are expected to face continued difficulties in securing operating loans, according to their organization's estimates, which could also mean continued farm consolidation, Tanner.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how quickly things advance. And one of the things that's been advancing is the Senate Ag Committee's unanimous vote of moving Brooke Rollins' nomination for the Secretary of Agriculture forward. The full U.S. Senate will now consider her confirmation. The nomination has strong support from ag groups, including the National Association of Wheat Growers, the American Farm Bureau, the American Sugar Alliance. Wheat Growers CEO Chandler Gould praised Rollins, saying that she is deeply committed to advocating for the country's producers and understands what rural America faces. He urged the Senate to confirm her quickly. One thing that I've always wondered about, Delaney, is, I need a better knowledge of the political system. Is the current Secretary of Ag still holding daily responsibilities, or are we in a gap of no person in that spot? So that is probably why the urge for a more quick moving this through the Senate is being pushed. The ranking Democrat, Amy Klobuchar, said she would support the nomination, but Democrats are worried about workforce, tariffs, and conservation issues. Senate Majority Leader John Thune said, as a committee member, he told a Hagestrom report that he wants to bring up the nomination quickly, but also said that pipeline is full this week for other modes of decision-making. So we'll continue to keep an eye on that and see how quickly it moves through the Senate. Delaney?
Tanner, I believe to your question earlier, we have an interim person that steps in between changing administrations for most government cabinet positions. So one other government cabinet position is RFK's nomination. The Senate Finance Committee this week advanced his nomination for the Secretary of Health and Human Services on a party line vote. The full Senate is expected to consider his confirmation as early as next week. During the vote, Republican Senator Tom Tillis of North Carolina noted a lack of organized opposition from the agriculture community, saying, quote, "People from the agriculture industry called me and expressed concerns, but I'm not aware of any organized, credible groups such as the Farm Bureau or the Department of Agriculture commissioners opposing Mr. Kennedy." Democrats, however, have raised concern about Kennedy's experiences and ethics, urging him to rescue himself from potential conflicts of interest, including ongoing anti-vaccine litigation against him. So we will see next week, potentially, how that nomination moves forward.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of fireworks in the news, and we've seen the potential for more fireworks. However, leaders from Mexico and Canada say that President Trump has stepped back from his threat to impose tariffs on North American trade partners. President Trump and Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum announced that their planned tariffs are now on hold for a month to allow more time for negotiations. According to the Associated Press, Mexico has agreed to deploy 10,000 of their National Guard troops to the U.S. border to combat the drug trafficking. Steinbaum outlined changes in their border policies as part of the agreement, and Trump confirmed the troop deployment himself. However, the tariffs on China are still moving forward. China has responded by imposing a 15% tariff on U.S. coal, liquefied natural gas, along with a 10% tariff on crude oil, ag machinery, large engine vehicles, and a couple of other categories. Analysts suggest this measured response may be an effort by the Chinese policymakers to encourage negotiations and to prevent an all-out trade war between the world's two largest economies. We'll see if there are more fireworks to come.
A bipartisan group of senators this week introduced the new AM Radio for Every Vehicle Act. This legislation would require automakers to keep AM radio accessible in all of their new passenger vehicles, including EV, at no additional charge. This legislation comes as many automakers have said they were removing AM radios from their newer vehicles. If enacted, the bill would require the Department of Transportation to issue a rule requiring new vehicles to maintain access to broadcast AM radio at no additional cost to those consumers and provide small manufacturers at least 4 years after the DOT date to comply. The AM Radio for Every Vehicle Act also requires automakers to inform consumers during the period before the rule takes effect that the vehicles do not maintain access to broadcast AM radio. And Tanner, as you think about why is AM radio important, this is something I learned a few years ago. If we were to have some sort of national crisis and we see telecommunications shut down, AM radio is the one fail-safe that we have in the event of some sort of major disaster here where telecommunications would otherwise be shut down. So an important safety measure amongst other things there.
Yeah, it is a technology. I remember the first time we reported on that, learning that it's not like a DVD player when it goes out of production. We still have ways that you can watch DVDs. No, this is tricky. If you don't have anything that receives the AM waves, that would be difficult. We've also seen difficulties for large ag manufacturers. Several of the biggest ag companies in America are feeling the pinch to hit their bottom line. According to Reuters, ADM posted its lowest fourth quarter profit in 6 years, citing the weak oilseed crush margins and uncertainty over the U.S. biofuel policy. The Chicago-based company plans to cut costs by $750 million over the next 3 to 5 years, including eliminating 700 jobs. Meanwhile, Bunge Global missed industry expectations for fourth quarter profits as a global surplus in crop and prices pressured grain trading margins. The company's agribusiness segment, which makes up more than 80% of its revenue, saw adjusted core earnings drop to $364 million, down from $639 million a year earlier. It's also been a tough outlook in the equipment manufacturer sector. Case New Holland Industrial is forecasting lower than expected profits for the year ahead due to that weak demand that they see coming in 2025. So it seems like it's industry-wide, Delaney.
Well, regardless of maybe some lower industry profits, U.S. farmers maintained a positive post-election outlook in the latest CME Group Ag Economy Barometer, which rose 5 points from December into January, reaching a score of 141. The increase was largely driven by a 9-point jump in the Current Conditions Index, while the index of future expectations also edged up a few points. Compared to previous surveys, fewer producers cited lower crop and livestock prices as a major concern for this year, boosting confidence in their current marketing. An uptick in crop prices between December and January when we saw President Trump take office also contributed to the improved sentiment. Despite this, farmers remain more optimistic about the future, with the futures expectation index starting 47 points higher than current conditions. And additionally, the Farm Financial Performance Index climbed 14 points, signaling expectations for a stronger 2025 compared to last year. So not saying things are going to turn around completely here, but growers are thinking, hey, things are going to be slightly better perhaps this year than compared to last year.
Well, with sentiment on the rise, we're seeing a new platform called the Ag List, which will help farmers discover agricultural biological products and see what other growers are using and recommending. There are hundreds of companies manufacturing these ag biologicals, a broad category that includes biocontrols, biostimulants, biofertilizers, just to name a few. To date, farmers didn't really have a way to figure out which products might work best on their operation. Dr. Pam Marone said in the latest Salinas Biological Summit that it's a crowded space. There are opportunities, but often ones that come first are the easiest technically and don't necessarily target what growers are needing. So it's nice to have a list for our producers and listeners to be able to reflect on and review when it comes to those biologicals.
Yeah, I took a look at the platform the other day. I didn't realize it was quite this new, but it is a cool platform nonetheless, so check it out there. The USDA's Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service, otherwise known as APHIS, is announcing the resumption of cattle and bison imports from Mexico set to begin in the next several days. Imports were halted back in November after the detection of the New World screwworm in southern Mexico. Following extensive talks between the U.S. and Mexican officials, both countries have agreed on a comprehensive pre-clearance inspection and treatment protocol to protect U.S. livestock. Under the new process, animals will be inspected and treated for screwworm by trained veterinarians before entering pre-export inspection pens in Mexico. They will also undergo a second inspection by Mexican officials before being cleared for a final inspection by APHIS. Cattle and bison approved for entry into the U.S. will also be dipped in a solution to ensure they are insect and tick-free. This new protocol aims to safeguard U.S. livestock while allowing trade to resume, Tanner.
Yeah, that's a nice update for us there. Now, this week, we've got a fun interview to share with our listeners from an area of ag that we don't hear from often. On our podcast, we have our reporter and producer, Michelle Stangler, out where she sits down with Donald Chase, the vice chairperson of the Georgia Peanut Commission, and a farmer in central Georgia to discuss peanuts, chickens, and corn. They also explore how the peanut checkoff program compares to other ag checkoffs, highlighting both of the similarities and differences. Before we get into that, Delaney, is a peanut part of the nut family?
I think it's a legume, so I don't know.
It is. Look at you. So it's not even a nut itself, but I'm sure we're going to learn even more about that. So let's get into that interview right after this message today.
Calving season is a favorite time of year, but along with that special time are dangers, extra stress, and increased labor. Safety Zone calf catchers are all about safety and making processing new calves easier. Designed for ATVs or UTVs, one person can do the job and never be threatened by the protective mother cow. Make this and every calving season safer and easier with a Safety Zone calf catcher. Watch videos and customer testimonials or order yours today at safetyzonecalfcatchers.com or call 877-505-0914. Affordable and made in the USA. Make your upcoming and all future calving seasons safer, easier, and stress-free. Durable and designed to work anywhere you can drive your ATV or UTV. Order online at safetyzonecalfcatchers.com or call 877-505-0914 today.
Well, a bit untraditional here interview. We have a popsicle that has peanuts in it, and it relates to poultry. To talk more about it, here is Donald Chase. He is with Georgia Peanuts. So, Donald, tell me a little bit about who you're here with.
So I'm a farmer who's a board member for the Georgia Peanut Commission. We represent all the farmers in Georgia as the Checkoff board for Georgia Peanuts. And we sponsor, as most checkoffs do, promotion, research, and education. And one of our research projects this year revolved around utilizing peanuts in poultry rations. And this research was actually done in North Carolina, and our friends in North Carolina said, hey, you want to do this project? And we say, hey, Georgia's number one in poultry, number one in peanuts. This would be a great fit for us. And so Dr. Toomer, who's been here with us, has got some really good results on utilizing maybe even whole peanuts in the shell in poultry rations, got increased performance in terms of broilers and increased performance for eggs. So it's really cool research, and we said, hey, we've got to get this to the people who make decisions about poultry rations. So we're here at the Poultry Show.
Yeah, we're here at the International Processing and Production Expo, IPPE. Did I say that correctly?
I'm sure glad you got it, because I've been coming for years and I don't know the name.
So IPPE, so International Show. And so when you think about this show and the connections, why did you create something like this?
Well, this is a project that we work with. Obviously, peanuts are primarily used for human food, and they're really good, right? And so we, through cooperation with different Georgia companies, we've developed this peanut butter ice cream in a push pop. And they're utilizing Georgia-grown peanuts, utilizing other Georgia-grown products in this. And it's a really high-end, really wonderful product, right? And so we were like, they're based in Atlanta, and we were like, hey, we're going to be at the Poultry Show. Would you like to come? And it's a great draw for people because, who doesn't like peanut butter ice cream?
Mm-hmm. You're here as a checkoff organization. Our listeners may be part of a dairy farmer or, on soybean, the corn side, so they all have checkoff funds. And
Yes.
how those checkoffs get dispersed is all different across the board.
Exactly.
And so if you look at your efforts now as a farmer, what's really important to you as a board member?
Well, so when you think in terms of generic promotions, it's difficult for us to compete with the promotion efforts that, say, a Smucker's can put out, or a Hormel with Skippy peanut butter. So we don't need to. We're working in the same lanes, right? So we do some promotions more in terms of local in the state of Georgia. But this is something that we thought, hey, this is unique. We've never done a promotion for animal food for peanuts before. Hey, let's give it a try. The other thing, and the thing that excites me the most, is still research. Peanuts are unlike other commodities in that breeding is done in public universities. There are no large corporate breeders or sources for peanut seed. So we're intimately involved in the process. As a matter of fact, kind of as an industry, we have decided that we don't produce GMO peanuts. I don't object to GMO products. I plant GMO corn. It's not a problem of that, but we want to be cognizant of what consumers do. And I think that's industry-wide. So there's just a lot of collaboration throughout the industry, and the Georgia Peanut Commission simply is a part of all that.
Now, when I think about Georgia, I think about poultry. Tell me about the peanut industry. What does that look like?
Well, we're the number one peanut producer in the U.S. We grow approximately 50% of the peanuts in the U.S. Our products are mostly for peanut butter. Some candies, but predominantly peanut butter. Our Carolina, Virginia friends grow the ballpark peanuts. Our West Texas and New Mexico grow the Valencias, the 2 or 3, 4 pod peanuts. So we've kind of got our niche with runner peanuts, and it's 80% of the peanut market in the U.S., in the Southeast.
Wow. And so tell me, you're a farmer. What do you all farm? What does that look like for you?
Well, I farm peanuts because we only rotate peanuts 1 year out of 3. I farm field corn and sweet corn and have a roadside market for the sweet corn, and then I have a poultry farm. So this is a big fit for me. I've been coming to this show forever and looking at all the vendors. It's the first time I've ever been an exhibitor here.
So you can relate to a corn grower. What are some similarities that are in your industries of poultry and peanuts that may relate to some of our corn listeners?
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is kind of funny, but the real big deal with poultry is it's a income generating stream, but it also produces a fertilizer stream, and that's really a pivotal part of my farm operation. And a lot of people in South Georgia and Southwest Georgia have gotten the same thing. So we use that as a source for a lot of our phosphate in terms of fertilizer. And we, over the years have adjusted it and tried to work through that as best we can. And so, I mean, it's kind of a full cycle, if you will. Corn is good for the rotation, and then peanuts come along. Peanuts, not only are they supplying nitrogen to themselves, but they leave like 20 pounds of residual fertility for the next crop. So, which is corn, and then we do 2 years of corn or sweet corn, and then back to peanuts.
Wow. So as you look at fertilizer, can I ask, do you sell that, or do you only have enough for yourself?
I only have enough for myself.
Okay. Do you buy in any fertilizer?
Yes, a lot.
Okay.
That's the one thing that perhaps makes corn growing in the Southeast a different animal. And we also have to be irrigated, because without irrigation in the Southeast, you would have much more problems with aflatoxin.
Interesting. Well, as you look into the poultry industry and combining peanuts, who are people who do a lot here with Georgia Peanuts? What are the people who come on your boards? What are
we all have to be farmers. So, but we also participate in a number of other industry groups. So the peanut industry consists of 4 segments, if you will: the growers, the shellers, those who buy our peanuts and then process them and shell them, and then the manufacturers. There's also some brokers in there. We participate in one group called American Peanut Council, which represents all 4 segments of that industry. But we work, it's a small industry, so we're really close together with a lot of them. And particularly our other growers in other states and things. We're sort of the I states in corn production, but we work really well with our friends in other states.
If you look at peanut production specifically, what are some challenges that you're running into?
Well, we think that peanuts are the most sustainable crop grown in the U.S. We're working on a really great program, the U.S. Sustainable Peanuts Initiative, to document that. And farmers, without being compensated, or maybe some a little reluctant to participate in that. So we're trying to help them understand the value that our consumer friends want to know what we're doing out here on the farm. And we've got a great story to tell, so why not tell it? And the other challenges that we see in peanuts, really has more to do with those rotational crops. The primary rotational crop for peanuts in Georgia is cotton, and they've had just the rising cost and the lower price for cotton has made it really taxing for a lot of cotton farmers. Peanuts have suffered in that as well. I mean, we've all suffered from rising costs and lower prices. So that's always going to be there. It hasn't changed a lot in the years that I've been farming, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. So you may have said this already, but what percentage of peanuts go directly to human consumption versus into other areas like poultry?
Right now, it's probably in excess of 90% that goes to human consumption. For as terms of byproduct, so when peanut oil is made, you have peanut meal. That's used in poultry rations in the Southeast, more of a localized thing right today. So yeah, in terms of, it's almost all human consumption. So this is kind of a new endeavor for us.
Yeah. If you look at that excess byproduct, is there excess?
Well, it works really well in poultry rations, so I think that it's probably consumed real well. And peanut oil is a premium oil, and so I think the demand probably exceeds the supply in peanut oil.
If you look at the poultry side of things, what are some challenges that you're running into there?
Well, obviously, this avian influenza has got all of us concerned. In fact, we were just talking today how that we don't see a lot of growers and a lot of companies here within Georgia are saying, we really don't want you to go to that show. We take all kinds of biosecurity measures, but that's got us all a little concerned. And we're going to redouble our efforts because it could be devastating, not just to my farm, but for the entire community.
Now, opportunities. What are some opportunities that you see in the peanut industry? Let's start there.
Well, from the growing side, I think that our efforts to do more selective breeding in peanuts will really pay off with disease resistances. And you've seen it in the convenience stores, just an explosion in peanut products, both mostly in the candy sector. The Reese's and Mars products are, they're just all over the convenience store. So that's a positive development. I think for us and farmers are always focused on how do we do our job more efficiently. So when we have things like a variety that's resistant to some of our diseases, not only does it make us be more efficient, but it also reduces our chemical dependency. And over the years, as we've evaluated since 1980, as we've evaluated how peanuts have performed in terms of those sustainability metrics, we've done really good in bringing our chemical usage per acre, pounds per acre, if you will, down. And I think that's going to continue a stepped approach.
Mm-hmm. And when you look at it, peanuts, human consumption, but it's a byproduct for the poultry industry.
Yes, that's right. So today, the predominant usage of peanut in poultry is peanut meal, coming from the oil process. And it's been a more localized market in the Southeast where there's an abundance of peanuts. So our point to be here is that, hey, peanuts can give you some really good additional benefits if used, and it doesn't require a whole lot of additional processing. So we're trying something. We're stepping out of our comfort zone a little bit and promoting that we use peanuts for something besides human consumption. But we'll never forget how great a good roasted peanut is, or a good peanut ice cream for that matter.
Let's talk about opportunity on the poultry side.
Well, there was a restaurant, Chipotle, who I've never supported because I thought they were not very supportive of American agriculture. I've always asked my children, don't go there, don't go there. And just within the last 2 months, Purdue Farms, who I grow poultry for, has said, hey, we're going to get a contract with Chipotle. It required an extensive animal welfare audit, which is all fine. We're adding enhancements in our houses so the chickens will be happier. That's all fine. And there's additional compensation involved with that. So I'm hoping that, because as far as I know, I don't know that they have been really supportive of U.S. raised poultry, and so maybe there's some tailwind there in terms of, hey, let's let people know that in every sector of agriculture, farmers are doing a really good job of what they do, and we are consumers just like everyone else, and we want to do the best possible job.
Mm-hmm. I think you bring up a great point on how Checkoff and the many hats you wear in production agriculture, this is kind of like a self-rewarding thing where you're able to promote.
Exactly. I mean, it's not always fun being away from the farm. We like to be at our farms. We like to be at our homes. But when we take time off from our farms and help to promote things, and we've met a lot of really awesome people here today, and we're always happy to share about what the good things we're doing in peanuts, and hopefully it will pay off for the future for agriculture. That's why we do this. What we're doing today has very little bearing, but I look at what farmers who were in these leadership positions 20 years ago did, and I think those guys did all right. So I'm going to be judged 20 years from now.
And that's probably some great advice for anyone who serves on a Checkoff board, whether it be soybeans, corn, and
absolutely.
Anything else that you want to add?
We also have developed a Peanut Leadership Academy. And so we're trying to bring younger people in and educate them of what we do, why we do it. And if I walk away from the Peanut Commission one day and I don't have good replacements, I feel like I've been a failure. So we're doing, I think our staff is doing a spectacular job with that.
Well, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
All right, as 2025 kicks off, the U.S. corn acres are potentially on the rise, driving up fertilizer demand, and that's all according to Josh Linville of StoneX. Another report coming from him. Corn acreage estimates are near 92 million, but have now jumped to a forecasted 93.5 million acres. Some experts predict the number could reach as high as 95 or 96 million, driven by that strong corn to bean ratio. Positive seed sales feedback is reinforcing that, as well as favorable farmer profitability projections. Linville also shared concerns voiced by several other ag leaders regarding the potential tariff threats. Canada, which is heavily reliant on U.S. for phosphate, is hoping the tariffs won't go into effect, as both Canadian and U.S. farmers wouldn't bear that financial burden. We'll continue to watch as the new extension to the tariffs come out. But Delaney, what's happening in the grain markets this week?
Well, we've certainly seen grains continue to remain strong after the first of the year here. And next week on Tuesday is the February WASDE report. If we look back at historical data, this report tends to be more negative than positive. If you look back from 2000 until 2024, about half of the time, a little over half of the time, the report was more negative than positive. As we think back to the January report, it was a surprisingly bullish report for both corn and soybeans. So will that sentiment of positivity carry through to February's report? We'll see next week. In the cattle markets, we're continuing to see record high prices as we enter our 6th year of herd liquidation, paired with strong beef demand. Analysts at NCBA's Cattle Facts seminar noted they are expecting to see prices remain firm for a few more years. As noted earlier this week in San Antonio at the NCBA convention, Tanner. So all in all, that might be played into farmer sentiment as well, as we're starting to see things maybe turn around a little bit here for the better, especially for our livestock producers.
Yeah, always going to be an interesting year ahead. It's neat to be a part of these farmers' news delivery and information. Again, like we said, we're going to be out and about over the next 30 days. So if you are in those areas, please come up and say hi. Or if not, let us know who we should run into and have a conversation with, Delaney. But that's it. That's all I got for this week. What do you say? Should we let the listeners go?
Let's let them go.